Hey you guys, this is Kale over at Colorado Media School, and today we are going to talk about the three elements that make up the exposure triangle. If there's one thing that infuriates me to my core, it's going to be really bad exposure on a really good video. This is what separates okay knowledge of camera work to mastery knowledge of the camera work, is to be able to control your exposure to convey the kind of messages you are wanting to illustrate to your audience. So we're going to break all three steps down. We're going to start with aperture, then we're going to move to shutter speed, and then we're going to finish up with ISO. So come along with me and I will try to explain this as quickly and as simply as possible, and I hope you understand and become a better camera person because of it. So let's start with understanding aperture. Aperture refers to the openness or closeness of your actual camera lens. This is measured in a thing called f-stops. So you'll have f2.8, f4, f5.6. It's really scary looking. There's like this f with this fraction and then the number. I promise, don't let it intimidate you. Just kind of keep in mind, the smaller the number, the more open the lens is. The bigger the number, the more closed the lens is. The more closed the lens is, the more of the background and the more of everything you see. The more open it is, the more compressed or blurred out the background will kind of appear. Think of it like a telescope. If I'm zooming in really close on like a telescope, you're gonna really only focus on that one thing. But if you're zoomed really far out on this telescope, you can see more of the whole picture. And that's kind of the same way that your f-stop works. Everyone got it?
Not even a little.
Beautiful. Next, let's talk about shutter speed. In videography, shutter speed is the amount of time each frame is exposed to light. It's typically measured in fractions of a second, so like 1/50th or 1/100th, blah. A general rule of thumb to set your shutter speed is to double your frame rate. So for example, if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, which is kind of like the industry standard for movies, your shutter speed should be around 1/48th or 1/50th. This creates that kind of natural motion blur, just kind of the same way your eyes pick up movement. Faster shutter speeds can make motion look real choppy, almost kind of like you're shooting a stop motion film, while slower speeds can create like a really excessive amount of blur. Now, it's important to remember that even though that I gave you that tip, all of your shutter stuff and all of your exposure stuff for that matter, it's kind of dynamic. So there's not really like a key or the best way, or these are the numbers, always use these numbers. It depends on your scene, right? It depends what you're going for. And a lot of mastering the exposure is going to be knowing how to break the kind of normal rules of exposure correctly. Same thing with any kind of art form. So I want you to keep that in mind. There's not like a magic number that will make anything look good. It depends on what you are wanting to achieve. So shutter speed. So finally, we have ISO. ISO measures the sensitivity of your camera sensor to light. So lower ISO values such as ISO 100 or ISO 200, it's going to be generally less sensitive and it's going to have less noise or grain in your footage. It's going to be ideal for brightly lit rooms where you kind of don't have to rely on the camera to bring in extra light. You can kind of bring that ISO down a little bit. Higher ISO values like 1600 or 3200 and go all the way up to really high will increase your sensitivity to light a lot. So instead of like a dimly lit room or a brightly lit room, you can use a dimly lit room with really high ISO. That way you can kind of extract whatever light is in the room, can fully hit your sensor all the way. So it's important because if your ISO is really high, so is your grain. And if you have a lot of grain, you're kind of going to lose a lot of image quality. So you want to find the balance between low and high ISO, because if it's too high, you're going to mess up your footage. So keep that in mind with ISO. It's kind of a volatile change there. So now that we've kind of identified all of the three pieces that make up your exposure, let's talk about how they kind of work together. So imagine you're filming a scene in a dimly lit room. You need a larger aperture because you want to bring in more light for the camera. So that would equal a low f-stop number, so like f2.8 or f4. And then a shutter speed that matches your frame rate to maintain that natural amount of motion blur. So if you're shooting at 24 frames like we just discussed, you would do 1/40th, 1/50th, somewhere kind of in there, to maintain that kind of natural look that your eyes pick stuff up at. And then you kind of want to tick the ISO up a little bit to boost and kind of make up for the dimly litness of the room. Now, again, it's important that you don't have your ISO too high or you can end up messing up some footage. Asking me how I know. So that's going to do it for the exposure triangle. We are going to work on, and that's going to do it for the exposure triangle. You learned how to use your aperture, you learned how to use your shutter speed, and now you have learned your ISO. Now get out there, use these tools to make some cool stuff.